Grizzly Man is a documentary about Timothy Treadwell, a grizzly bear enthusiast who became a national celebrity for camping out at the Katmai National Park of Alaska for 13 summers until he met his end at the jaws of a bear itself in October of 2003, along with his girlfriend at the time, Amy Huguenard. During that time period and after his death, he has been a subject of controversy for his unusual style of studying bears, having no formal education in any form in any scientific studies, only have been self-taught by living with the bears without any protection or weapons to guard himself. He also has defied park rules and federal laws by actually getting close up and personal with the bears, believing himself to be their self-appointed guardian, watching over them against poachers, and even saw himself as more one of them than a human. Before I saw this, I had heard little about Treadwell, but like a lot of people I imagine, I've always thought that, while what he wanted to do was admirable, him putting himself into harm's way like that with no protection whatsoever has always rubbed me the wrong way, especially when he not only got himself killed, a reasonable outcome, but another person along with him. It's just so fucking stupid to actually go out into the wilderness where bears are roaming freely with nothing to protect yourself against just to prove a point. While it is quite remarkable that he spent 13 summers straight with them like that, it doesn't change the fact that it still happened, almost predictably so. So, needless to say, I wasn't all that interested in watching it because I thought I was going to mostly defend his actions. That is, until I saw it for a class in college. Now, while I do feel like that, not only do I have a much better understanding about him, but I actually have no bad feelings towards him. It doesn't really matter honestly that what he did was stupid. It only matters now that he still did it anyways, and the only thing that can be done is to try to look at it with as much objectivism as possible. At least, that's how I see it. Narrated by the director himself, Werner Herzog, the documentary largely uses footage shot by Treadwell himself of the last 5 summers he spent. Here, Herzog uses it as a primary source and tries to get a sense about Treadwell as a filmmaker, nature lover, and most importantly, as a human being. The biggest satisfaction I have with this is how Treadwell is presented by the director. He doesn't try to paint him as either a saint or sinner, just a person who's in love with bears just a little too much and maybe a bit disturbed if not mentally ill. However, if there is one thing I have to praise Treadwell for, is the footage that he caught, like the bear fight in the middle of the film. We get to see the ferociousness of the two bears as they fight over the right to mate, and Treadwell just let it showcase itself, something that any nature documentary would pay big bucks to have. Another highlight is his interactions with the foxes, which is innocent enough and maybe even more acceptable, even though he does often cross the line between humans and nature. However, Treadwell often inserts himself in front of the camera, giving on-screen narration like a TV personality, giving his offbeat take on the scene, and even giving some of the bears their own names, which sounds like something a child would give to his collection of teddy bears. Speaking of which, when looking at his footage where Treadwell would just talk for an extended time, it does have a childlike quality to his tone. During these times, Herzog just let Treadwell go like an actor who is committed to a scene, rarely ever interrupting him whenever he's given his professional take on the bears or just bad-mouthing groups of people in a childish rant. Here, Herzog gets his take on the madness with a reasonable sense of logic that is entirely his own, that is rather convincing as to presenting what kind of person Treadwell really is. He goes into his backstory as an all-American kid who has always loved animals, to his drug use as a young adult, his failed acting gig, and his redemption and finding his calling. He interviewed people who knew him best and people who are critical of his actions, using them to paint a picture of Timothy Treadwell like a good biography. Oftentimes, Herzog will be critical of Treadwell's actions, but the biggest criticism he will give is of Treadwell's childlike view on nature. Several times, Treadwell will comment about his eventual death by a bear, and yet he acts as if he is almost invincible. In fact, he talks as if he is part of their family, like they have welcomed him into their exclusive group, not understanding that these are wild animals that should not be taken lightly. He comes off as ignorant, someone who can't seem to understand that nature isn't as nice as we like to believe, that it can be cruel if one does not take it serious enough, that death and survival is an everyday occurrence with these animals, for both young and old. Even so, while it does seem to verge on fundamentalism, in the end, I kinda have to respect what he did. I mean, how many people do you know have spent 13 summers in a row, 3 to 4 months each time, with no weapons, living with bears like he did? Even if you wholeheartedly voice against it, as I do, you still have to admit that it still took a lot of guts to do something like that. That is something that is uniquely all his own, and that is something that I have to give him some credit for, even with a terrible and predictable outcome. By the end, I was entertained, fascinated, and even a bit drained by this. Herzog does an excellent job in giving us a rather objective view on a person, being critical of Treadwell, but never disregarding his work. I never got the sense that the director was talking down on him, like he probably would have liked an intelligent discussion with Treadwell. And while I myself still believe that what Treadwell did was stupid and wrong, at the very least I can come to an understanding and even recognize some of that childlike wonder of nature within me that I'm sure a lot of us have for ourselves. It is a wonderful documentary about an interesting person that even as harsh as the critics ought to give it a chance and give him a proper judgment by the end.
And the longhorns are gone, and the drovers are gone, the Comanches are gone, the outlaws are gone, now Cointreau's gone, Stand Watie's gone, and the lion is gone, and the red wolf is gone.